Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report. And coming up on today's show, we're going to get into the latest Raiders OC rumors. We're going to talk about, right now there's certain candidates that are going to be brought in for the hiring process. And then at the very end of today's show, I am going to give you my prediction on what I believe the Silver and Black could end up doing, because I think they have a plan at OC. On top of that, we have a lot of GM news to discuss because it sounds like it could happen today or tomorrow, according to multiple sources. But here's the thing, man. I want you to subscribe for Raiders videos every single day. Once the Raiders hire a GM, we're going live. Once the Raiders hire an offensive coordinator, I'm going live. At the end of the day, this show is about what the nation thinks, and I love having that instant reaction type of feel. So when the Raiders do hire a GM and OC, not only are we going to party on here, but we're also going to be able to break it all down for you. So hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. All right, so let's talk about the thing that literally just dropped here. Albert Breer tweeted out the Steelers and Raiders have put in slips to interview Rams pass game coordinator Zac Robinson for their OC jobs. Robinson interviews with the Patriots tomorrow, previously interviewed with the Bears. Also, according to a source, he finished in second place in the Bears interview process to be their OC, which I do think is very important because Champ Kelly has a lot of ties to Chicago, and they're going to be able to trust what each of those groups are saying overall. But on top of that, though, Zac Robinson has been a name that I have brought up multiple times here on the show, so it sounds like Mark Davis is listening here a little bit. But in terms of who's going to be the next Raiders OC, Las Vegas has started having more OC conversations. Breer also reported yesterday that 3 names that he's heard were Shane Waldron, who was just hired today by Chicago, Kliff Kingsbury, and then Luke Getsy. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Kingsbury. We're going to talk a little bit more about Getsy coming up here, and I'll give you my 2 cents on what I think about both of these guys and how they would fit with the Silver and Black. Like Zac Robinson, I'm telling you right now, I think that would be one hell of a hire by the Raiders. In terms of Getsy, he's the former offensive coordinator for Chicago, and the Raiders have been looking at him for their next OC job. He definitely has some ties with Champ Kelly. I will admit they were never on, like, when Champ Kelly was working with Chicago, that's where Getsy wasn't, though Getsy's been a prominent figure in the NFC North for quite some time, working with a bunch of Green Bay Packers teams. But he was the OC the last 2 seasons. If you're looking for somebody that knows how to run the football, Getsy's had some success in that guard. He's been working in the NFL since 2014. He's actually from like 3 hours away from me, which I found out he even has coached at a few schools that I played against back in college, which is kind of wild. In his 30s, about to be, I want to say 40 years old this upcoming year. If you're looking for what he has done at the college level, this is what he's done from the college ranks. He started at Akron, then he went to West Virginia Wesleyan, where he was OC/quarterback coach, Pittsburgh grad, Indiana, PA, that's close to me, and I actually have a bunch of my friends who went there. Western Michigan wide receiver coach, and then Mississippi State OC/wide receiver coach back in 2018. Not only does he have that experience, he's got a lot of NFL experience as well. With the Green Bay Packers, with the Chicago Bears, he was kind of an up-and-coming person in terms of could he be a coach that didn't have a lot of play calling experience, but if you're the NFL and you're a team and you can find that next young, great play caller, that's where teams can get separated. For Chicago, I think they were really hoping that Getsy was going to be somebody to keep in mind. And on top of this, you know, if they do hire Champ Kelly, and if Champ Kelly ends up going with somebody like a Justin Fields as your next quarterback, I'd really be intrigued to know if they were to decide to bring in Getsy. I'll talk a little bit more about this, though, coming up here in just a second. The other person to keep in mind here is Kliff Kingsbury, and Coward talked about it last week. I talked about it as well, and he essentially said that if Antonio Pierce were hired, that Kliff Kingsbury would be a name to consider for OC. We obviously know now that Antonio Pierce has been hired to be the Raiders head coach. And Collins said, I have a source that told me Kliff Kingsbury is his likely OC if he gets the job. Breer also then doubled down and said that Kingsbury is a Raiders OC candidate. So there's a lot of smoke that continues to grow around this idea of bringing Kliff to the Silver and Black. And he's got some coaching experience on top of that. And he's played in, I shouldn't say played, he's been a coach with a lot of spread style of offenses, right? You go back and you look at some of those old school Houston Cougar type of offense, man, they were not afraid to chuck it around. Texas A&M, Texas Tech, worked with Patrick Mahomes. Then Arizona with Kyler Murray. I will say, though, I think when people hear air raid, when they think of Kliff Kingsbury, they think of totally spread out offenses. That does not mean, though, that he's not going to run. In fact, you go look at a lot of those Kliff Kingsbury offenses, and they've had some success running the football. What I like, though, about it is the most dynamic offenses that Kliff has ran have been with quarterbacks that are difference makers. And to me, if you're going to bring in a guy like Kliff, you got to go find your difference maker at quarterback, because if there's one thing that I learned, and it's not anything that I learned, something that I already knew, if you watch Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, you need to have a quarterback that's just different. Because if you're rolling out with Aiden O'Connell, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, guess what? You're not competing with those teams on a weekly basis in the National Football League. So it's going to be my pinned comment on today's show, which means you're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. I want you to scroll on down and give me your honest opinion. Who do you want to be the Raiders OC this upcoming season? Last week, I gave y'all my top 4 candidates to be the Raiders OC. Kliff Kingsbury, he has now been linked to the Raiders. Clint Kubiak, I'm still hoping the Raiders put in the interview for him. I think he would be a really good fit here with AP. Zac Robinson, shout out to Mark Davis for listening up. That's a hell of an interview that they got there. And Shane Waldron was just hired by the Chicago Bears. So the bottom line is, I gave 4 names for my top OC. Waldron's already been hired. 2 names that they're going to interview. So good job, Mark Davis. It sounds like they're doing things the right way. Here's the thing, though, right? If I'm going to talk about me being excited about Kliff, I'll be real. I'm not loving the idea of going out and bringing in Luke Getsy to be the OC. He kind of ran a very vanilla offense there in Chicago. Could you put some blame on the offensive line? Yes. Could you put some blame on Justin Fields? Absolutely. However, though, according to a source that was very tied in with the Bears team itself, Fields and Getsy had an okay relationship at best. What you don't want, and I don't think that the Raiders will do this, is you can't bring in Getsy to be an OC and then you trade for Justin Fields. Like, that to me doesn't make any sense. What I do think, though, could end up happening here is, what if the Raiders had an idea of their OC QB coach being very similar to what they're doing with GM and front office? I'll explain this a little bit more in a second. So, coming up, what I think the Raiders are going to do on the offensive side of the football, what the Raiders are going to do at OC, and what the Raiders are going to do at the quarterback coach position. At least, this is what I would recommend them to do. I will tell you that, but I do got to tell you about our awesome sponsor here, Prize Picks. I love doing Prize Picks, especially during the playoffs. AFC Championship game, lock it in. NFC Championship game, lock it in. I can already guarantee you I'm going to be doing this pick. All you got to do is pick 2+ players, choose more or less. And if anybody wants to get started, you can find the links down below. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. Just make sure that you use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Also, when you use code CLNS, that tells Prize Picks that you watch Jeremy and I's show, which, believe it or not, it does help us out quite a bit. So quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. My picks for this weekend's games are as followed. Give me more on the rushing yards for Lamar Jackson at 59.5. I think if you're going to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, to me, Lamar's a hell of an athlete. He had a great game against Houston. You can ask Chugs on that. But also, Josh Allen showed that he could have some success running the ball. Give me the less on 1.5 passing touchdowns for Jared Goff. I think he has 1 touchdown. I'm hoping they get that running game going. Anything with Christian McCaffrey on Prize Picks, I'm just going to be real with y'all. I always go with more. Rushing yards, receiving, give me the more on it. And then Patrick Mahomes on 0.5 interceptions. I took the more on that one as well, hoping the Ravens, who I think have the best defense in the NFL, get a nice little pick. Be great little pick 6 Jack Jones action against Mahomes. So again, y'all, if you want to go get started with Prize Picks, it's prizepicks.com/CLNS. Just make sure that you use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. So my plan for the Las Vegas Raiders on the offensive side of the football at OC, it's more of a idea, and I want you guys to hear me out on this idea. So to me, what I love the fact that the Raiders are doing is they're saying, all right, we're going to hire Antonio Pierce. We know that he's a first-time head coach, and maybe he's a little bit in over his head. That's okay, all right? It's a new job. I think anybody, when they start a new job, you're in over your head a little bit. But what's important is you build a great staff and you build a bunch of good coaches around him. So what if we had this idea of, what if we brought in Kliff Kingsbury to be the OC? And then you bring in Luke Getsy as a quarterback coach, because Getsy's had quite a bit of success as a QB coach. And then you could bring Kliff Kingsbury in at OC, and I do think that this would be creating a very intriguing offense overall for the Raiders, because when you combine Kingsbury's success in terms of the air raid with an athletic quarterback, it's intriguing. He's worked with Patrick Mahomes. He's worked with Kyler Murray. Like, that's the style of quarterback that I want the Raiders to go after. Then on top of that, you add Getsy's ability to have a lot of success in the running game, because I'll tell you what, when you look at Getsy's offenses in terms of what they have been able to do on the ground, a lot of success. So to me, if you bring in both of those guys, kind of like what the Raiders are thinking potentially doing at GM, right? Like, you keep Ed Dodds at GM and maybe you hire Champ Kelly as an intern, or vice versa. Or, maybe you bring in somebody like Ed Dodds at GM and then you keep Tom Telesco as a front office type of executive. Bottom line is, I like the Raiders thinking outside the box here a little bit, and my outside the box thinking is Kingsbury's OC, Luke Getsy at quarterback coach for the Silver and Black. One of the things that I want to look at here is Aaron Rodgers' stats, and the reason I want to look at this is because Getsy was a part of Aaron Rodgers' regime back in 2019 as a QB coach, and yes, this was not the best year that Rodgers had at 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. What's more important is, instead of just looking at the numbers here by Rodgers, it's, guess what? It's connections. And if Getsy has a good connection with Rodgers has a good connection with Davante Adams, and you need to be able to make sure that you're making Adams happy as much as humanly possible on the offensive side. So because of all these ties, I could see Getsy being an intriguing option in terms of being that quarterback coach. On top of that, though, the Bears offense in 2022, which was not great in terms of throwing the football, passing yards per game, I think this is more to blame on the simple fact of no offensive line, no talent around Justin Fields. But this is also the season that the Chicago Bears ranked number 1 in rushing yards per game. It's also the season that Justin Fields broke the single-season record for most rushing yards by a quarterback. So if you were going to go out and get a guy like Jaden Daniels, all right, I can have Jaden Daniels learn next to Luke Getsy, who helped Justin Fields have his best rushing season of his career. And then on top of that, I can get Kliff Kingsbury, who knows the air raid, who can really spread it out. You combine both of those things, and that's kind of intriguing to me. Then Bears offense in 2023, it did get a little bit better. They added a little bit more talent around it. So to me, you are building a offense, because if I'm going to hire Antonio Pierce, I want Pierce to manage the defensive side of the football, right? And then one of my keys for this offseason for the Raiders is giving the keys to somebody on offense. And if that's Kliff Kingsbury and if that's Luke Getsy, two people that have head coaching and offensive coordinator experience, and then you let them create what they want to be able to do on the offensive side of the football, I think that's intelligent. If you want to do it with Kliff Kingsbury and Zac Robinson, I'll admit, I don't see Robinson leaving unless it is an OC job. So if you wanted to bring in Zac Robinson for OC, and then you want to put Getsy in at a quarterback coach, I'm in, man. Hell, if Kliff would be willing to take a quarterback coach for the Raiders, I'm in, right? To me, bringing in 2 out of those group of people and then just stacking up that offensive side is a better overall option for the Raiders. So here's kind of what I'm thinking here. You bring in Kingsbury as OC, Getsy at quarterback coach. AP has a good relationship with Kingsbury. Champ Kelly has ties with Getsy. Yeah, and you're also going to make Davante Adams happy. Sounds like a win to me. So what is your one-word reaction if the Raiders hire both Kingsbury and Getsy? And the reason why my mind is just going around this topic here is because it's what the Raiders have kind of done this offseason. It's like 2 names, a few names are just randomly linked at the exact same time. And to me, it's like one candidate is better than the other. So could you potentially bring in both of those candidates? One-word reaction for if the Raiders were to hire both Kingsbury and Getsy. Mine is excitement. The Raiders offense needs to have some excitement this season. And to me, Kingsbury, that's going to be exciting. Getsy, you bring in somebody who's going to have experience in terms of getting the running game going. We know how much Antonio Pierce loves the running game, but also taking advantage of some of those running ability from an athletic quarterback, which is what the Raiders need. You need a quarterback that's exciting, and I think that would be an exciting offense. So to me, Raiders are just wasting their time until you can find that quarterback that can compete with Patrick Mahomes. You're just wasting your time until you can find a guy that can compete with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Can Aiden O'Connell beat Patrick Mahomes in a game on Christmas Day? Yeah. They also had 2 pick sixes, though, in that football game. Like, to me, I don't want it to be little giants where little whatever the heck coming down Cherry Hill Lane, and all it takes is you can win one time. Anybody in any sport can win one time. But legitimately, if these teams were to do a 7-game series, if it's Aiden O'Connell up against Patrick Mahomes, they're not winning the series. If it's a 7-game series against Josh Allen, you're not winning the series. If it's a 7-game series against Lamar Jackson, you're not going to do it. So to me, the only way that you're going to be a legit Super Bowl contender is if you find a quarterback that can compete with these guys. And I think with this offense that I have created here, you're going to be able to get the most out of those guys. Coming up here, Raiders GM and defensive coordinator news. We are going to get into the latest here around Patrick Graham. On top of that, there are a few things that we have to discuss in terms of Raiders GMs because it's starting to heat up, and I think that this thing could happen sooner rather than later. If you don't know, well, hey, I want to tell you about it. Chugs and I were hosting a Super Bowl 58 watch party in Las Vegas, where at the Ahern Luxury Boutique Hotel, if you want to reserve a spot, you can give them a call literally right now and say, hey, I want to reserve a spot for our Raiders Report watch party. When is it? Sunday, February 11th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. The venue itself, from what I understand, holds somewhere between 85 to 100 people. It's going to be first come, first serve. So, again, if you want to reserve a spot because you know you're going to be there, give them a call and say, hey, I'm going to pull up. If you want to know what it looks like from the outside, this is what the hotel looks like. It's a little bit outside of the strip, so it's honestly, beautiful hotel. They have a lot of different ins and outs, but why I'm really excited is because of the entire environment and the experience. So if anybody's ever been to an Xfinity Live, a Texas Live, that's what we're going to try to do here. There's a full bar in the back. Chugs and I will be up on stage. There's going to be opportunities for y'all to pull up, have a beer bong with us, do a boot. If somebody bangs live on YouTube, there's going to be a bunch of drink deals. There's going to be football signings. There's going to be jersey giveaways, potentially Raiders players there. And then if you're like, well, I don't want to just go to Vegas for the Super Bowl watch party, Joel's Chop House, one of the best steakhouses in Vegas, located inside the Ahern. If you're more of a wine connoisseur, they have a wine bar and social club inside of Ahern as well because, hey, maybe you want to take wifey, she's going to get some bottles of wine, and then you can hang out for the Raiders Report, or maybe it's vice versa. But we will have special food and drink deals. There's going to be tons of giveaway opportunities, and then there's going to be opportunities for y'all to pull up, hang out with Chugs and I, watch the Super Bowl, and then instead of me doing a beer bong every time somebody bangs, somebody is going to be on the show doing a beer bong. There's going to be boots. It's going to be something that I am really, really excited about. We've done a lot of watch parties in the past in Vegas. This one's going to be unlike we've ever done anything before. And the reason why I want y'all to pull up, because if it goes well, being honest with you, then there's a chance for us to be able to go there every single game next year. So if you want to have the opportunity to do Raiders Report watch parties in Vegas, hang out with us, please don't be afraid. Pull up. It's going to be one hell of a time. Bring as many people as you want. Many people as you want. It would help us out. Also, let's get into here to the latest around Patrick Graham. The Raiders, they will meet with Mike Caldwell for a senior defensive staff position with DC flexibility if Patrick Graham gets a head coaching job per Tom Pelissero. For those that don't follow me on social media or maybe aren't subscribed here to the show, I talked about how Patrick Graham is going to have a second interview with the Seattle Seahawks for their head coaching gig. I do not anticipate that he gets the job. I know Seattle is interested, but to me, the guy that they're going to hire is Dan Quinn. I'll tell you this, though, because I've heard this from a source. If the Seahawks do not hire Dan Quinn to be their head coach for whatever reason, maybe Quinn wants to stay in Dallas or he doesn't like the job, the next guy that they're thinking about hiring is Patrick Graham. So this needs to be taken very seriously. Mike Caldwell for DC, I would not like this at all. More updates here, though, from the Raiders general manager standpoint. This one's rolling in from Vic Tafer from The Athletic. Former Chargers GM Tom Telesco is in Las Vegas for a second interview for the Raiders GM job. The reason why this is very intriguing to me is because Mark Davis about a month, 2 months ago stated that he was a little bit hesitant on hiring a GM and a head coach that it would be their first-time job. Telesco was with the Chargers from 2013 to 2023. So from what it sounds like right now, there are 3 people in the running for this job. Tom Telesco, Ed Dodds, and Champ Kelly. All of them are going to have their second interviews today and tomorrow. And Ian Rappaport was on TV today, and he said that he believes the Las Vegas Raiders are going to hire a GM either today or tomorrow at some time. He also then said that he wasn't 100% sure. He just knows it's going to happen sooner rather than later. The bottom line is this, though. With the Raiders hiring Antonio Pierce on Friday, with the Raiders now starting to transition to their offensive job search because other teams are already starting to hire OCs, the GM hiring is going to come sooner rather than later. I'm going to say it's either going to happen today on Monday, tomorrow on Tuesday, or on Wednesday. When it does end up going down, we will be live here on the Raider Sports. Make sure you guys pull up, hit that subscribe button, and turn on those notifications.